third and final season of Squid Game is now streaming on Netflix. The final 6 episodes are now live, and I actually just got done watching it, and I'm here to talk to you guys about it. However, it is pretty much impossible to talk about this season without getting into some spoilers, so you have been warned. There are going to be some of those in this video. So if you have not seen Squid Game Season 3 yet, check that out and then come back and watch this. If you have seen it, let's get into it. Season 2 ended on a massive cliffhanger with the failed uprising against the frontman and everyone in charge of running the games, and Gi-hun once again transported back to where the rest of the players were, and now the rest of the games just have to play out as they do. But they are extremely deadly, as you'd expect, and that body count has to pile up. At the same time, there are also operations taking place outside of where the games are, with Detective Wang, who is closing in on where the island could be, and potentially that operation being disrupted as well. And so all of this is now sort of coming to a head towards the finale of the series. It's really interesting when you look back on where Squid Game started in 2021, that massive global phenomenon that it was, where everybody was talking about it. And so season 2 came with a ton of anticipation, and I thought season 2 was also a really solid one, albeit not quite as strong as season 1, and a lot of people had some critiques towards it also because it's somewhat of an incomplete season. You don't get the entire story over there. But that's obviously something that was planned, because season 3 is coming out just months after the release of season 2, because they filmed it pretty much at the exact same time. And when you're watching what's happening in season 3, it very much does feel like part 2 of season 2. And it brings that entire story together. Mostly. There are some very big plot threads that are finally addressed over here, and some things that do get closure, and it does also leave some things, open-ended, and a few things that we could potentially, learn a little bit more about in due course of time. But I'm getting a little ahead of myself there. Let me talk about the season in itself first, which is incredibly bleak. That is to be expected. As things are becoming more intense and as the games are becoming more difficult, there are going to be a lot more people dying in order to get to the end. The way that dong-hyuk, who is the creator and showrunner of this, who's written all of these episodes, he does a really great job of making it feel as dreading as it can be. When you get to the first game over here, which is this starry night situation where they're playing hide and seek, that entire episode and how that entire situation unfolds, brilliantly executed. The 3 games that you get over here, I thought the first 2 in particular were really splendid. There's this jump rope one with 2 statues now, which is incredibly intense, and it's a spectacular sequence. I mean, there are some major stakes raised over there, and it's also a play on things that you've seen before, but just added a little more spice to it, if you will. And there's a similar scenario in that the people who are watching it, are the ones who are funding the games, essentially. These VIP guests who are there, these rich assholes who have come to basically wine and dine and watch people get killed. Which is one thing in season 1 that I remember when it happened, was like, oh, this is so goofy and over the top. But it is one of those things that's goofy and over the top here too, and it just, adds to that message that Hwang Dong-hyuk as a writer is just getting across when it comes to, this divide between the rich and the poor. And while that's a commentary that has been in the first 2 seasons so far, it's very much a case over here too. And maybe even more so blunt. They really want you to know exactly what this show is honing in on. But at the same time, Squid Game in a lot of ways has also been about the humanity of people, like just looking for what essentially gets people to get up and keep going, and finding the real purpose in all of this. It might sound cheesy when you hear me say it like that, but really, as the plot is progressing, especially with Gi-hun and Lee Jung-jae, once again incredible in the season, you're starting to see more and more of just what's bigger, the bigger picture in all of this. And the bigger picture in all of this is to essentially go against what the entertainment, the audience would like to see, which is something that leads to some bold decisions being made as the story's being told. And I was quite a fan of some of those decisions. I don't expect everybody to be a fan of those decisions though, and I say that because they're decisions that go against the grain when it comes to what you want out of this final season. That means characters might say or do something that, is going to be completely out of left field. There might be a death that happens that you don't want to see, but this is not a show that's built on good vibes. People are not doing this because they enjoy playing the games. They're playing it because they're desperate and they want the money. They need to get something done, and they're in situations where 45.6 billion won is enough to, make that dream that they have become a reality. It leads to bleak things. It leads to very dark and deranged acts from people. But that doesn't make the deaths or the losses any less heartbreaking. Like, early on in the season when Hyunju died, I was actually really sad about that. Like, that was a character who I really, really liked in season 2. And in season 3, you get a few more badass moments with her, but then unfortunately she doesn't make it. And when you get to Young-sik and his mom, they both just want to be there for each other and make sure that they get out of it alive, and they're constantly looking out for each other in the games, and there is that love of a mother and son that's coming through. Both of them do die, but having Young-sik's mother essentially kill him because he's about to kill Jun-hee, who's just had a baby, who was pregnant and has now had a baby in the middle of that starry night game. He's about to kill her in order to get through to the exit, but then he is stabbed by his own mother. And just the fact that, it's a situation where the baby has to be saved in order to do that. It's a heartbreaking moment, and it eventually leads to his mother eventually committing suicide and hoping that the baby will be helped and something can be done about this, and she pleads to Gi-hun about that. Gi-hun has the baby because Jun-hee got injured during one of the games, and she's dead now because she jumped and killed herself in the jump rope game. And because that's happened, now he's got the baby, and he made a promise to her that he will watch out for her in case of anything. What they do in terms of the story is incredibly twisted also, because it just, once again, it's like you're seeing the worst tendencies of humanity over here when it comes to the fact that, hey, why don't we take things up a notch? Like, what if the baby was a contestant? As soon as that idea came up, I thought that's fucked up. That is fucked up. What are you planning on doing? And so 222, which was the number of Jun-hee, now has gone to her daughter, her newborn baby, and Gi-hun has this baby, and he's like, what the hell am I like? You can't expect the baby to make decisions or to compete in these things. And so there is this immediate sense of ravenous like killing nature that comes alive in the other contestants, and most of the other contestants, who are like, why don't we just kill the baby, like make it easier for us, because otherwise that baby's hanging on to money that we could have right now. That baby is now deciding whether or not they win the games. And it's also like treating it with the fact that, but you also can't just kill a baby. It's incredibly twisted stuff, and the fact that the writer of this show, Wang Dong-hyuk, the fact that he went there, ballsy move. Like, I mean, it is, again, it goes like into such dark corners. At the same time this is happening, if you were following the plot from season 2, of one of the pink soldiers who had joined the team, and she wanted to take care of one of the contestants who had a daughter suffering from cancer, that plotline also goes through quite nicely, as she does eventually manage to help him get out of there and hopefully get to his daughter on the other side, despite the island being like, hey, that's a contestant leaving and we're gonna come after you for that. But she eventually goes after the establishment herself, and she takes on the second in command of the front man, and eventually there's the fight between them. Also fairly solidly done, very brutal stuff. And eventually that final game, when it comes to that wrap-up session between Gi-hun, the baby, and one of the other contestants who happens to be the baby's father and Jun-hee's ex, like that entire standoff, incredibly intense, and it's heartbreaking just seeing all of that play out. And eventually it leads to that moment where it's just Gi-hun and the baby left. And as soon as I remember the baby was introduced and this game started, I immediately I knew that Gi-hun was not going to make it to the end of this. And he does die. He sacrifices himself, and the baby is the winner of the game. And it's at that point of time that Detective Wang, who is still in the water trying to find the island, and eventually does get a tip off from having rescued the father of that daughter, like, hey, I think the island is over there, Coast Guard is coming in, and so the island has to be blown to smithereens, and it is. And that's kind of where you think would wrap up, and then you get an epilogue of some of the characters as far as a where are they now thing is concerned, and you find out that the baby was in the hands of the front man, and because he is Wang's brother, that's the confrontation that never really happened, and he just kind of got away with it. But he does deliver the baby to the detective along with a credit card that has all of the money in there. And this one pink soldier we've been following, this one woman who believes her daughter is lost, her husband's already dead from North Korea, she might be alive, her daughter, in China, and she's going to go look for her. It leaves that open-ended for where that could go. But the one that's really interesting is towards the end of the episode, where the front man shows up to Gi-hun's daughter's house in Los Angeles, and she wants nothing to do with her father, but he hands over a box, and it's also got a card with money on there, and also his uniform, 456's uniform. And eventually he leaves, but as he's driving and as he's at a red light, he rolls down the window and he sees a game of Dodokji being played in an alleyway by Cate Blanchett. And she is essentially playing Gong Yu's role, who we saw early on in the series. And she's winning, and every time she wins, she slaps the guy who seems to be interested in the game and that he wants to keep going. And it seems to imply that it's becoming like an international thing. So that, the Squid Game may have been one thing that's been blown up right now in this chapter of the story. But there could be more down the line, and there is more avenues that they could explore. Will they explore those avenues? Probably. It's Netflix. They might do something. Will they have Cate Blanchett in them? Who knows? Anything's possible. But I did think that was a really cool idea, so I'm curious to see what that's like. I did like the 067 cameo, though. Like, there was that one moment where the front man, after revealing his identity to Gi-hun and, being like, hey, if you want to get out of these games right now, you can kill all of these guys in their sleep, the ones who want to kill you and the baby, and, make this easier for yourself. But as he's about to do that, he holds back because he sees a vision of 067, the girl, and it's like, you're not like this, like, this is not who you are, and that stops him from doing it. I did like that moment. That was really well executed. Did I think everything came together in the final season? Mostly, yeah. I did think it was fairly well handled for the most part. I still think the B plot with everything regarding the detective and everything on the boat and stuff like that, sometimes not as well paced perhaps as the rest of it was, although there is a little more going on over there now this time in this season that I think made it work a little bit more. I do think that there are some aspects to it, especially with the VIP guests and stuff, where I was like, okay, I get the point. It's exaggerating a little far now, like it's getting a little too hammy and over the top, a little too much perhaps. That was something that I felt like when they showed up briefly in season 1, but they're here a lot more in this season. And every time it cut to them, I'm like, yeah, I get it. You're hamming it up, like it's there. But still, overall, by the end of the season, I was happy with how it played out, and I think as a whole, it does bring Squid Game to a decent closing. A bold one, and again, like I said, not everybody's gonna like how it ends, which is totally fine. I feel like there are gonna be a ton of people who disagree with this review too. But for my money's worth, I kind of pretty much got exactly what I wanted out of it. Like, the last 20 minutes or so are interesting, and there are many payoffs to that which I did think were fine. But overall, I mean, at the end of the day, it is up to you guys what you guys have to make of it. I'm gonna give Squid Game Season 3 an A-. Guys, thank you very much as always for watching. Look forward to more videos very, very soon. As always, if you like this, please do subscribe, and hope you guys enjoy the show.